Good morning, good afternoon, or good night. How are you? I'm Daniel Marcos, your host at the podcast Learning Up. And I'm here with a really, really good friend and lifelong learner, Jason Marc Campbell. Hey, Jason, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Daniel. It's good to be here.
So quick intro about Jason. We met long time ago at Mind Valley. He's a super lifelong learner. You're going to hear a little bit about that. And he's the author of Selling with Love. He's also a faculty at the Growth Institute and teaching entrepreneurs and helping entrepreneurs how to really earn with integrity and expand their impact, doing it the right way. And hey, we've been in the entrepreneurial world for many years, and we've seen a lot of entrepreneurs doing it the wrong way. And Jason's doing it the right way and teaching entrepreneurs how to do it the right way. He has a mission to help and inspire small business owners to really break this reluctancy about selling and really selling with love and doing it right. So let's start there, Jason. What is selling with love? What is selling with integrity?
Yeah, well, I mean, you've witnessed it as well. I'm pretty sure for anybody listening, you've noticed what it's like to be on the receiving end of a terrible sales process, right?
I hate to be pitched and sell like a car salesman.
Right? Well, I mean, you ask anybody, like, what's the first thought that comes to mind if you think about salesperson? And that used car image is in the mind of everyone. And so what I find fascinating is that when we think sales and we associate sales with such an image, it's more than likely an image that we don't want to associate with. Like, we don't want to go out there and be like, I'm going to be just like that used car salesman that takes advantage of people, and this is what I aspire to be. Not so inspiring, right? And what I find unfortunate is that most entrepreneurs who want to run ethical business or mission-driven business and really have impact as a priority, like the reason you started your business is because you identified a problem that you want to solve and make the world better in the process. If you have this negative view around sales, it's going to hold you back from doing what is necessary for people to understand the value you want to provide to them. So the whole concept of selling with love is reframing our stereotype around what great sales is, because we sure as hell know what bad sales are. And unfortunately, we use that bad example to label all sales, so we reject it altogether. And of course, I'll use the expression that's always fun to use, which is, I'm trying to make sure we're not throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
Hey, so let's talk about sales and why people are reluctant about sales. Are they afraid? They feel like a car salesman that they have to push. Like, what are the feelings and behind the sales, and why there's so many people that hate sales? They feel very uncomfortable around sales.
Yeah. Well, in the process of writing my book, I did a bit of research, and I tried to see, like, where were the source, because that was the ultimate question. Like, why do we naturally not like it? We actually naturally seem to hate it, right? And it seems the higher integrity you have, the more you end up selling less because you don't want to associate with that world. So a couple things I've noticed that are quite interesting. Number one is we all have a story we remember or an experience we personally had of a negative sales experience. And, you know, if you want to be a doctor, you have to go to school, do your residency, and the steps to get in are quite steep. So by the time you become a doctor, you have to almost be guaranteed. Now, of course, there's going to be a few bad doctors, but the majority are going to be good doctors because there was a large filtering process. So a certain type of person makes it, gets certified, practices health. And so now your impressions of most interactions with most doctors is going to be probably a better chance of being a good one. What are the standards, qualifications, and requirements for you to become a salesperson? Well, there is no filter. And quite frankly, a lot of people don't become salespeople by choice. They become salespeople by desperation. They couldn't get any other job, right?
So let's talk about that. That is very important. So my first company, I did the first fintech in Mexico, and I was working with the most like determined people, great educated, all that. And then I moved to the US and opened a mortgage bank. And I was working in real estate with a lot of realtors and people that they usually don't fit in any other big company, and they default to become realtors, right? Because there's no barrier of entry.
It's very low.
It was depressing. It was hard to work with a lot of people with very low standards.
Yeah, so because you have that barrier to entry is quite low and still ends up being quite lucrative in most cases, you have a lot of people that will get into it and can actually be moderately successful even if you're not that great at it. And so as such, you have a chance of encounter with a negative salesperson is pretty high because there's so many environments that a sales process is happening. Like sales is happening around us all the time, everywhere, for everything. Like the entire human world was created as a result of sales processes, from the house that we live in, the roads we drive on, the countries we decide to live in, the phones we communicate on, all of it, the food we eat. It's all a sales that either happen with friction or without friction. And here's the thing with Daniel is anytime a sales happen without frictions or without a negative impression, goes unnoticed. We'll label it something else. The only well, if a great sales process is executed beautifully, more than likely you're not going to label it as a sales activity. And and that's great because you'll often hear the people saying like, I don't sell, I just make sure that people know what they're getting, and I'll explain to them the features, and then if they want to buy it, they'll buy it. I'm like, what the hell do you think a sales process is? So
they think selling is like pushing and
yeah. So the only time we label something as sales is the negative things around sales. So number one, the reason you hear sales and your hair on the back, you will start going up, is because the only things we label as sales are the sales events that we've experienced or know people have experienced that are typically negative. So now we automatically don't want to be in the bucket of the Wolf of Wall Street, although entertaining movie, not a role model for the kind of ethics we want to have in our lives.
So I heard the other day Russell Brunson saying that if you really believe that your product or service is going to have a positive impact in your client, it's your moral duty to market as aggressive as you can. So let's talk about, yes, you're selling something, but what's on the back of selling that? And why sometimes you feel really great about selling and sometimes you feel really bad about selling, because what you're selling on the back is not the right thing to sell.
So I have a definition of sales I give, which is, and of course, as you know me, Daniel, we go way back. I work for a company called Mind Valley, personal growth education. Sometimes we embrace a bit of the woo-woo, so I'm going to throw a word called energy at you, so brace yourselves, everyone. I consider and define sales as such. Selling is an energy exchange between conscious beings. And I use the term energy because products and services takes energy to create and to deliver. Money is nothing more than stored energy. You've created activity that created value. You've stored that energy for future exchange. And time is basically active energy. It expires the moment it passes. And I go into more depths of geeking out around why everything is energy. But the one thing that most people forget is through every transaction, there's also an emotion in that energy, right? And I always make the cute label that, actually emotion is emotion, energy in motion. And so, okay, if there's going to be an emotion in the sales transaction, well, what are the big buckets here that make us excited or completely be terrified about selling? And as a broad stroke, I say, you're either selling from love or you're selling from fear. And to be able to sell from love is when you know what you offer is so much more than what you ask in return. That's what selling with love is. And, if we're going to be using some more aggressive language, I will say when you know you're going to be offering so much more value than what you're asking in terms of payment from that person, then you will do everything you can to sell the hell out of that product. And it's not a question of trying to manipulate someone. It's actually having empathy. It's speaking the language that is necessary for people to understand the value you want to give to them. So yeah, I'll agree with Russell. And that only comes at the condition of knowing that what you're offering is so much more than what you ask in return.
Let's talk about that as a value. I see a lot of entrepreneurs that they're trying to make money and they don't worry about the value and they don't worry about the impact they're generating. And that's why you have impact all over your book, and it's all about really having a positive impact. And there's entrepreneurs that they really start with a problem. And Peter Diamandis always says, if you want to create $1 billion company, solve $1 billion problem, right? So find a problem that you can fix and then fix it. And that's how you make money. So let's talk about building companies. What's the right mindset as an entrepreneur to build a company and then be able to sell with love? The things I think if you start the company with the wrong principles, then the selling is going to be complicated and it's going to be hard. If you start the company with the right principles, then it's easy to sell after that. So what have you seen behind the selling in the principles of the company that makes sense?
So in the way that I explain selling with love, there's 5 different loves of selling that I think people need to think about. And there are some foundational loves that you have to go towards before you even start loving the process of selling. So, you speak about people that the biggest thing that they're trying to solve is maybe more abundance in their own life. They want to be rich, they want to make money, all that stuff, which is very self-centered. And I usually don't give it in this order, but for the sake of explaining in your case, so if all you do is fall in love with the process of selling, you can make a lot of money when you don't care. But as I mentioned earlier, there is an energy exchange that happens anyways. And if you're coming from that place of pride when you sell, isn't it fascinating that when you see people that go with that kind of intention and are selling aggressively without taking any responsibility for the outcome of their sales, there seems to be some sort of correlation around substance abuse, addiction issues, mental health issues, because the cost is stored somewhere on you. And if you're not wanting to face the reality of the responsibility that comes with every sale, we usually find ways to distract and numb ourselves to not face that reality. So I'm going to leave that there for those who might be trying to choose, let's say, the dark side of selling, because here's the truth. If you don't care and you learn psychology in the process of selling, you can have success up to a point, but it's going to come at a cost. So
going back no matter what,
something's going to pay up to balance that equation, right? So if you're trying to set up,
you and I were talking about this before the recording of the episode, and how we see entrepreneurs that they try to fake it until they make it, but they're really faking it all the time. And there's some that start with a really good intention. At the beginning, they have to push it up a little bit, but that behind they have a lot of value. They really add a big or solve a big problem.
See, the values of the company will be driven by the values of the leader. And, you teach this so much at Growth Institute, and the same comes to your sales values. So I always say, like, okay, the 3 things you need to get through before you even start thinking about loving the process of selling, which is an important process, if not the most important process when you get started, because guess what? No sale, no revenue, no business, right? You have to love the impact, love the client, and love the product. That's like the first 3 loves you got to have if you're going to go out there and try to build a business. The impact has everything to do about the problem you want to solve. What's the difference you want to make? Going back to Peter Diamandis, what's the $1 billion problem you want to solve? Because then you'll get yourself a $1 billion business that can actually solve it. Loving the client is actually about understanding who specifically you're trying to solve and how does that problem manifest in their life. Because you can have a solution for a person that's at a very early stage, or you can have a solution, the same one, offered to a Fortune 500 company. The way they will value that solution is very different, and so that'll impact your entire business model. But you have to understand it, because if you're going for that equation where what you offer is more than what you ask in return, who you sell to is a massive variable to that equation.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? And then only once you know the problems you want to solve and who you want to solve it for can you actually design a product or an offer or a service, whatever you want to label that, as your third love, which is there. You don't fake it till you make it. You make it. Awesome. Fantastic. And once you have that really figured out, then you sell the shit out of it because it's amazing.
Right. So now let's go to the sales process and how to train a big group of people to sell your stuff. Because if you really want to build a big company, you want to scale a company, you have to have a replicable sales system, and then you have to teach people to sell like that. So how can you train people correctly to sell with love and follow and love the sales process, you said?
I think it comes again, like I said, the leadership will dictate the culture, and the sales culture is a very delicate one because it goes directly to your customers. They will be your first line of communication between potential customers and your actual customers, and the way you speak with them will actually be a reflection of the values being shared by the owners. So most important is, as the leader of the organization, you speak of the values of the company and how that translates in examples and stories of sales. So an example would be, I remember, I'll tell you one of my stories that actually is something that I'll tell my team, which is, hey, there was this time that there's this person I was about to sell this, and this was back in my youth. It's actually a story from my book. And I tell this story about how there was this man I was selling real estate education programs. Okay, this was like, think Trump University or the Rich Dad, Poor Dad type. It was kind of an equivalent of that in Canada. And, early 20s, I really was excited. It was during the downturn in 2008. So I was learning how to flip properties, put renters in place, and sell them back. And as such, we had programs teaching other Canadians how to do so. So long story short, there was one individual that went to prison, and they were looking to buy the program. And the program was all about buying real estate sight unseen. But this man physically could never go in America because of his criminal record. And I was trying to sell the shit out of him, right? And and I was aggressive. Okay, I was like, listen, we're going to teach you how to do it sight unseen. If you came out of jail, your chance of getting a job are even lower. So you need to take control of your future and you need to take action. We're going to give you the guidance. We're going to show you how to do it. And we're going to give you the deals. You have no reason not to move forward on this. And it's a $20,000 program. So you better get ready. We're going to take you through. So I did the whole thing. And I remember I hung up that phone because he ended up saying no when we started. He hung up the phone thinking like, oh man, okay, I need to do this. Let me get you back to you. And I hung out. And as much as I should have been excited from having taken a no into a possible maybe, I didn't feel good. I was like, is he really going to be successful? Is this really the best path for him? And so it was one of those instances where they didn't buy and I was relieved because that would have sat on my conscience. And I don't think this was me taking the best care of somebody. And so when I share that story with my team, my students, they understand that, hey, you can make mistakes when it comes to sales. You have to grow and you have to learn, and then your values get formed from some of your past experiences. So now whenever somebody's on the phone, like I have one of my sales guys and I'm saying like, listen, your focus on those calls is to help them find some sort of awareness within their existing problem that they can continue after this conversation with value generated from the conversation. And if we see that it's a fit for them to join our programs, then you introduce those programs. But hey, if 10 to 30% of the people are going to buy, I also want you to care for the 70% that won't buy yet to be left with a positive impression of the brand. And so these stories, like expanding what are the results you measure and what's important to the company, not being so driven with short-term returns, these are going to be important things to instill in the culture, to communicate frequently and to reward as well. See, there's a lot of companies that are ditching sales quotas because if I have a quota and I'm measured on a monthly performance, I could have a conversation with you, Daniel, and I could be like, my God, you know what? If I use these nasty techniques, I might be able to get my close percentage from 30% to 40% and get that bonus. But here's the difference between closing 30% and 40% now is that the 60% will hate the guts out of your company and negatively speak about your brand. Where if you might have not used that and, draw a line in the sand of what is integrity and what is not in your sales practices, then you might actually have an extra 30% who could buy in the next year, because most people don't make their purchase decisions on the spot. And I think most of the people listening to this are playing a long-term game. So these are things you need to speak about, build a culture around, and reinforce frequently.
So let's transition from selling to learning. And this was kind of the question on the transition. You and I connected because we are lifelong learners. We met at a Mind Valley event and we started a conversation and he was like, what are you reading? What are you reading? And we got so excited because of what we were learning. And we became very good friends because of that. So I really believe like-minded people just connect. And for me, it's learning. And that's kind of how you and I connected and started doing a lot of things. So I believe that lifelong learners usually become leaders and scale companies and all that. But it's also about creating a culture of learning inside your company. And you have worked in several companies all about learning, and you have helped a lot of companies really get into learning. So let's talk about lifelong learning or learning for you, and then let's talk about learning for your team. How can you do learning right? How have you seen other companies done learning right? And how can you promote and get people to get into learning? We know that the long-term impact of learning is always going to pay off. But it's like going to a gym. You go to a gym the first time and you don't lose weight, you don't feel bad, you even feel worse. It's like, well, I'm not going to go to the gym again. No, but you have to go every day to the gym. And then you're going to feel great in some years, right? Or in some time, in some days. Same happens with learning. So What is it for you? Why you like learning so much? And then how can you help other teams learn?
All right. A couple things I'll unpack on that one is, number one, for myself, like I've been lucky enough to have joined several organizations that did prioritize learning, and they spoke about how amazing it was. And, we did talk about the, fake it till you make it, right? If there's one thing I find interesting is I find that one of the gateway drugs to get into lifelong learning is to actually read some of those abundance books like Think and Grow Rich. That was one of my first books. And to be honest, I go back to, what's that? A mandatory read, right?
Yeah.
You go into it and you get into those things that really feel like inspiring, and you read and you're like, wow, like these are reinforcing these kind of habits and ideas that might open up your curiosity gate. So I think you need to have a natural curiosity if you're going to be a lifelong learner. And from there, I set aside some time. I have some books that I read regularly. I have some courses. Obviously, I've been at Mindvalley, so I do a lot of e-learning as well. But I think naturally you have to be someone with at least a dash of always wanting to be curious, realizing that you don't know everything all the time, and then understand how important that is. Now, I'm pretty advanced now in the way that I do my learning, in the sense that being exposed to personal growth so heavily with my work that I've done with such companies, like I have goals in every area of my life, including my intelligence goals. Like I'm actually clear on what are my goals when it comes to my beliefs around what I want for my intelligence, the vision I want for my intelligence, and why it's so important to me.
How do you measure that? Like what kind of KPI can you have around that?
Yeah. So what I have actually is a set of like a vision for myself, which is just like, I'm always up to date on current affairs. I'm always continuously learning. The values I have around my intelligence is like, I understand that taking care of my mind will take care of all the rest of the problems, because most problems can be solved once you evolved your thinking. And so I have all of these beliefs really laid out on what I think are healthy beliefs around my intelligence. And then I have a vision of myself, which is like, people always count on me when it comes to figuring out some problems. I'm always curious. I'm always keeping myself as a student, even as I'm teaching. And so I have this all drafted out, and I have strategies that I commit to, which are, reading books, taking quests, taking care of the way I nourish my own brain as a physical part of myself, like the vitamins, the fruits, the veg, all of that is so interconnected. So, and I don't want to make a plug, but this is called a life book process. So I don't know if you're familiar with that one, but I take it pretty seriously. So I have goals around that. So I've been lucky enough to be surrounded with, personal growth, to be exposed to that. But if you're independent and you're within a company, the first things that come to me as a great suggestion, it goes back to what I said at the beginning, which is curiosity, I think, will end up being a very strong variable for people with an interest in continuous learning. And that's something you'd probably want to look into, finding ways to capture that from the hiring process. Because if you're hiring people that do not have that curiosity, then their interest in growth is probably going to be limited. And, I think most organizations are going to realize, especially with the rise of technology now, is that most jobs that you hire to just execute a specific process that cannot evolve by itself will be replaced. We're seeing it now. Even with the rise of ChatGPT, everybody's talking about it. Most redundant, boring jobs are about to come out the door. So the only relevance that you will have in hiring someone is someone that will be able to creatively evolve the role itself. So curiosity will be necessary, because if you're not learning, you are dying.
So I heard someone saying a phrase last week in a forum that I was, said, I know I will not be replaced by AI, but I'm going to be replaced by someone that uses AI better than me. And I thought that was brilliant. Best phrase I've heard about AI. Let's talk about teams. Now you have your personal curiosity, right? But you've worked in companies that they recommend and they are super about learning as a team. I believe the only way a company scales, if you scale the capabilities of your team. It's not growing them. Yes, you have to grow by number of team members, but most importantly is their capabilities and their brain and the tools they use. So how do you see companies do learning correctly and promote learning correctly inside the organization?
Yeah, to be honest, this was a huge issue that we were trying to tackle within Mindvalley, is trying to get a lot of companies that want to bring learning tools, but yet you would see that even though you would give away a bunch of licenses for the best tools in learning, most people would leave them on the shelf. I don't think I have a concrete answer for you, Daniel. It's something that I haven't particularly tackled as a problem, and I don't think I'd be the best person to answer a question like that, just because it's not something I've solved personally. But I know that all the types of things that are being tried in the industry to drive this, people are going very feature heavy, talking about gamification, better, consumption platforms, better integrated, but that removes friction. And that's one way to make people consume the content more. But there's a whole stack of motivation, and that could be lead around, how do you reward behavior around learning, knowing that it's such an important metric to make your company grow? How do you make sure that, you recognize the people that are showing initiatives around their growth? Are they being promoted? Are you recognizing publicly? So the entire culture within your small team would need to embrace that learning and have it be rewarded, recognized, and all of the incentive be driven towards reinforcing those behaviors. I think that ends up being a very big problem for companies to tackle, and is not the problem that I'm solving as far as the impact that I'm focused on. So I don't feel best qualified to answer that question. I'll be quite honest.
Fine. So let's go back to what you said on. You first have to have the passion or that interest of learning and growing, but then you need to define your learning, your best learning format. You've said for you it's all these learning courses and all that, online courses. What kind of learning format have you seen that works for teams, or have you seen other teams being used? We have online learning that is being, but just the videos, they usually don't stick. But you have all these events around it, make it fun. Like, what have you seen within teams that has made a difference? And what have you enjoyed being part of teams that learn, part of the learning experience?
When COVID happened, it forced everyone in the digital space, and everyone was very excited about, hey, look at this. We're going into the digital space. It seems like there's a lot of efficiencies. We're working from home. And now there's like this huge backlash around productivity. And everyone's like, oh my God, I miss the in-person. I think that for companies that really want to make a shift and really want to maybe kickstart a big learning and a culture shift around, education learning, live events do something special. I know the best learning experiences that I've experienced within companies were actually company retreat themselves that had a big focus on learning. And I know you've been a speaker at events within Mindvalley where it was a company staff only event. And so if you're running some sort of annual retreat, ensure that there's massive learning opportunities there. And if not, the thing I've seen the employees the most excited about is them given opportunities to pick things that they want to learn and pick events that they can go and attend to learn themselves, and showing that you're willing to invest in those that actually want to continuously learn and see that as a profitable expense for the company. And, have them bring back that knowledge, make them do maybe some preliminary work before they're eligible for these kinds of expenses being covered for them to go on these trips. But the physical event, that's the experience that will make a biggest shift of all.
Yeah. And you could have all within the live events or within the live, all the online and all the preparation, all that, but then have the start of engagement or the closing of the engagement with something live. Yes, we're human beings and we need that connection, 100%.
Yeah. We're starving for it now more than ever too. So if you are an event company, then I think this is one of the best opportunities for you.
All right, amigo, as always, a pleasure. I love that you're getting all the mystique out about selling and all the bad rap about selling and doing it right. Because as you said, everything we have is because someone sold us on it. A lot of my learning is because someone sold me the futures of a product or a service or the advantages. And that's why I know how much I know. Like YouTube as an example. If you pay the premium, you don't see ads. And people are like, buy it so you don't see the ads. And I was like, I love seeing the ads because I see what my competitors are doing. I see what people are doing. I learned a lot from the ads. So no, keep the ads. Of course, after 5 seconds, I push a lot forward, but I still see a lot of who does great ads and how they do them. And I learned a lot from that.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. If I was living in America and I was getting properly targeted for my demographic, I'm sure I'd be getting much more interesting ads, as I'm based sometimes here in Indonesia, and I'm seeing foreign language ads on products like fast food and like ridiculous ads of things of no interest with no proper targeting. So in my case, I do go premium, but that's because there's no people targeting me in Bali.
YouTube knows me so well in the US that they know exactly what I'm doing. It's crazy how weird it feels. Like I have a conversation with my wife, and then the next morning there's an ad about that. I'm like, no, wait. That aggressive.
But you see, this is very interesting because that's an example of when sales, and I put sales and marketing in a very similar bucket in the ways that I speak about it. And, even online marketing, I actually consider it direct sales automation, right? Because you're basically creating sales process that basically you've taken out the salesperson and you're guiding people through these journeys. When you have a seamless experience of a beautiful ad or a beautiful experience on a YouTube video that leads you to buy something, and you're like, oh, you're excited about buying, you're excited about what you're getting, we forget that we're experiencing a sales process. And that's something you want to be able to build within the way
I'm
that you
excited
innovate.
about it. I
Yeah.
love the process if I'm excited about it. If I enjoy the process, if I'm having fun and learning, I love the process.
And if I could just marry two things, which is just the fact that, hey, if you want to bring a lot of learning into your organization, realize that that is also a sales process that the leader needs to bring on to their team, because you can't just give them the product and being like, go learn. No, you need to sell the shit out of the benefits, and you have to explain it and speak a language that is necessary for them to understand the value. And so, yeah, you're selling, whether it's a
You have
product
to
or
excite them about the learning.
oh yeah,
100%.
there's a lot to be done.
Very cool. Amigo, it's always a pleasure. I always grow, I always learn when I have a conversation with you. So always a pleasure. Thank you very much for sharing, and love to have you as faculty at the Growth Institute.
It's my pleasure to be there, Daniel. Thank you.